Every December, the same claim comes back like clockwork. Christmas is pagan! It was stolen from Saturnalia, borrowed from sun god festivals, dressed up with pagan trees, and baptized just to make it acceptable. You'll hear this from atheists trying to debunk Christianity and from oddly aggressive Christians as well. The problem is, almost none of it holds up historically. These arguments rely on vibes, coincidence, wacky scholarship, and Wikipedia footnotes. When you actually trace Christmas through history, theology, and early Christian practices, something uncomfortable happens. The pagan Christmas myth falls apart. I'm Shua, and this is Pop Culture, where faith and fandom meet. Thanks for checking out this video. Please subscribe, like, and share this video. It really helps out the channel. And if you find it helpful or disagree with me, please drop a comment down below. And without further ado, let's talk about Christmas. All right, so starting off, Christmas comes from Yule. This is the claim that a lot of pagans have been making recently, and that Christmas is just a Christianized Yule. But the reality is that the pre-Christian Yule was like a vague Norse winter festival involving a lot of heavy drinking, animal sacrifice, ritual horse meat consumption, and there's no ancient sources that describe anything like we see in Christmas. No trees and houses, no gift-bringing figures, no sleighs, no reindeers, no chimneys, definitely no Jesus. And the Yule that we have to this day is mostly a reconstructed version of the old Yule, just from fragments and other Christian traditions that have gotten added into it later. And so this is just false on its face. There's no connection between Christmas and Yule. But what about Yule logs? Aren't those for pagan fire rituals? Okay, so let's talk about the Yule log. So the Yule log tradition appears in the 16th century, which is long after paganism had vanished from Christian Europe. It was now a Christian country, and it functioned as a Christian household blessing, all right? So it would be a symbol of light overcoming the darkness, which is the same imagery that we see in scripture. The word Yule itself became a Christian synonym for Christmastide. So it's not like, I mean, they got the term from just growing up and being around that area, and they kind of co-opted the term, but this is just the word concept fallacy. The Yule that they're talking about is the Christian Christmastide, and so there's really no connection. Language evolves and meanings change, so calling something Yule doesn't equal practicing the religion and the ritual of Yule. So what about Santa? Isn't he just like a stand-in for Odin? Odin riding the Sleipnir during the Wild Hunt? No. So the Wild Hunt is not really a real thing that we can find in any ancient sources. The first time that we see it is actually in a story written by Jacob Grimm, and not even a story, it's him making claims. But Jacob Grimm, if you know the name Grimm, is from Grimm's Fairy Tales. So we're talking about a fantasy writer here. The historian Ronald Hutton has shown over and over that medieval stories describe multiple unrelated spectral figures, and that there's not a single myth of Odin delivering gifts to children. And even what we do see in the Grimm thing is that Odin's gifts are things like weapons or curses or death-bound favors, and he gifts warriors who he later will kill for Valhalla. So this is very different from ho ho ho, Merry Christmas. You know, Merry Christmas, get slaughtered is not exactly what we have in mind when we think about Santa Claus. Okay, well, what about the eight-legged horse? That was basically a reindeer, right? So first off, we've got Odin and Sleipnir, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. We've got one god, one horse, 8 legs, 1 eye, right? Then with Santa, we've got 8 to 9 animals, depending on if Rudolph is in the equation or not. 32 to 36 legs, 18 eyes. There's nothing even sort of similar here. There's no symbolism that's the same. There's no math that's the same. The mythology is not the same. So this argument only works if all of a sudden horses are reindeers now. 1 equals several, and blind war gods are Christian saints. That's not really history. This is just kind of fan fiction. And as I said, this all comes from one of the brothers Grimm anyways. So where does Santa actually come from? Well, as you've heard in the song, Jolly Old St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas was a Catholic bishop in the 4th century, St. Nicholas of Myra. He was a real historical figure, and he was known for, guess what? Secret gift giving. Guess what? Protecting children. Guess what? Defending Christianity. Okay, so nothing to do with anything pagan at all. His legend kind of spread throughout, as does with the saints. And eventually it became a part of his feast day in December to set your shoes out, shoes, kind of like stockings out, and people would put little gifts in them. And obviously, stockings eventually came to be inside. It's got mythologized. The Protestants got involved. All this stuff happened, and now we got a fat man in a suit. But at its core, it's all still pointing to the real, actual historical figure of Saint Nicholas. So let's quickly talk about a couple other things that people like to bring up. They like to bring up Saturnalia and Sol Invictus. So let's talk about Saturnalia. So Saturnalia was a Roman celebrated holiday or feast or whatever you want to call it. That was from December 17th to the 23rd, which, as you may note, is not the 25th. So that claim is already kind of awkward. The actual descriptions that we have of Saturnalia doesn't sound like Mass or Christmas or anything really like what we have now. Instead, what you see is a week of chaos, drunkenness, gambling, role reversal, slaves, naked singing, and all sorts of other debaucherous behavior. And that's so far from what Christian Christmas is that it's really hard to tie a connection. So people basically confuse winter party exists with Christianity stole it, and that just really isn't shown in any of the data. What about the winter solstice? So the winter solstice isn't owned by the pagans, first off. It's an astronomical event. So this is just something that belongs to all of us. It's just a fact of reality. It's not really like a magical thing. It's just like an actual astronomical event that happens every year. Christians use cosmic imagery, light entering darkness, in our prophecies, like in Isaiah 9:2, people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. And in John 1, the light shines in the darkness, is how Christ is described. So what you're seeing here is that the winter solstice is kind of baked into the Christian Christmas story as well. Creation belongs to God. You don't have to ask pagans for permission to use the sun as symbolism. That just doesn't even make any sense. Now, some people will even try to point to stuff like gift giving as being pagan, which is really stupid. I mean, as you see in the nativity narrative in Matthew 2:11, the Magi bring gifts and give it to Jesus. We can very obviously point to that. And also, like, gift giving isn't owned by any one culture or religion. It's just giving another human being something that is yours. Like, this probably goes back to the cavemen, guys. Like, this is not something that we can just say, oh, look, they also give gifts, therefore pagan. That it doesn't even make sense. And there were winter feasts that existed in Jewish life as well. This isn't like a new thing that Christians made up. We can see this in John 10:22 through 23 with the Feast of Dedication, aka Hanukkah. So yeah, this is just silly all around. Now, for my biblically based Christians, if we get into Jeremiah 10, a lot of people will point to the language here and say that this is anti-Christmas tree or talking about Christmas trees, but Jeremiah 10 is about crafting an idol, okay? A tree is cut down, worked by a craftsman, decorated with metals, and the text describes it like a statue that must be carried and can't speak. That's not you put lights on a tree, therefore you're worshiping the tree now. It's nothing like that. This is a completely different thing. And really what the history of Christmas trees is during the holiday season, they would do these little plays in medieval Europe and afterwards in Europe, and that they would decorate these trees with like apples for representing the fall, and then like little wafers representing the Eucharist and our redemption after the fall. And eventually people started doing these things in their homes, and that became the Christmas tree. There's also some legends about Martin Luther, if you want to buy into that, but we can just point to the first usages that we see, which are for kind of holiday time plays in Christian communities. So if you've made it this far in the video, hopefully you can see that the claims levied at Christians that our holiday of Christmas is pagan in origin don't really stand up to any level of scrutiny. I was hopefully able to show that over the course of just a couple of minutes, with just some quick searches and some quick historian references. You can see that this just doesn't stand up to any level of push. This claim kind of started popping up in the 19th century from Protestants and atheists and other anti-Catholic people alike. And the reason that it survives is that it's recycled every year by atheists, pop culture, apologists, internet listicles, and all sorts of things, trying to say like, hey, look, all your traditions are pagan, therefore your religion is dumb. And it just doesn't actually hold up to any level of pushback. So As I think I've shown, Christmas is not borrowed from paganism. Instead, it proclaims that God enters our world in history. He is the light overcoming darkness. Creation has been redeemed, and we are all in need of a savior, and his name is Jesus, and he was born in a manger on December 25th. I rest my case. I'm Shua, and this is Pop Cultured. Hopefully you got a lot out of this video. You can send it to your conspiracy theory aunts or uncles or whoever, or any of the pagans in your life who try to clown on you during this time of year. Don't be afraid to celebrate Christmas. Celebrate it boldly. This is one of our great holy days. It's near the beginning of the liturgical season, Advent. There's so much beauty around this time, and I'd hate for it to all get taken away because you're scared that you're celebrating something pagan. Celebrate it boldly, proclaim the gospel, and as always, peace be with you. I'm Shua, and this is Pop Cultured. Thank you for watching.